"Jesus Christ," Deborah wailed, and I nearly drove us into the mailbox. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on the asphalt of our Upper East Side driveway. Champ was in pieces, literally. His head was detached, lying a few feet ahead of the rest of his body, which was twisted at an unnatural angle. His glass eyes, usually half-lidded and sleepy-looking, were wide open, staring blankly up at the overcast New York sky. It was the kind of vacant stare that chills you to the bone. I realized with a jolt that I had never truly looked into Champ's eyes before. He was Deborah's beloved beagle, always nose to the ground, sniffing out trouble or treats. Deborah, my wife, was a holiday fanatic. Any holiday, any pretext, she'd deck the halls, the yard, the entire block if she could. I'd lost count of the times I'd come home on my birthday or anniversary to a yard exploding with gaudy streamers and oversized banners announcing to the world, "Happy 45th, Michael." Groundhog Day, St. Patrick's Day, Columbus Day. If there was a Hallmark card for it, Deborah would find a way to turn our house into a shrine. But Halloween and Christmas? Those were her Olympics of ornamentation. Parking in the garage was a distant memory. It had become a storage unit for her ever-expanding collection of holiday paraphernalia. I grumbled about it, but it was her passion, her happy place. That's how the garage became a chaotic mountain of cardboard boxes, stacked to the rafters, mostly Christmas-themed. Each year, the pile grew, like some kind of festive fungal growth. This year was monumental. A life-sized nativity scene had taken over half the garage before it even made it outside. The three wise men in all their sparkly glory. A placid donkey, a fluffy sheep, and a glowing, slightly creepy angel hovering over Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus. From the roof, Santa Claus waved a mechanical hand, his sleigh and reindeer poised for takeoff. Snowmen and elves, slightly deflated and worse for wear from years of storage, frolicked on the lawn. Every tree, every bush, was strangled with twinkling lights, blinking in nauseating synchronicity with the strands outlining the eaves and windows of our brownstone. Above the porch, a massive banner screamed, "Merry Christmas to me." It was intense. Garish? Absolutely. Over the top? You bet. But I'd learned two crucial things over the years. First, my opinion on Deborah's decorating choices was utterly irrelevant. Second, voicing that opinion was only worth it if I was prepared for a glacial silence that could freeze over the entire tri-state area. Deborah adored it all. She was intensely proud of her festive displays, and her crowning achievement, in her eyes anyway, wasn't our two wonderful daughters, but the year our house, or rather its decorations, graced the front page of the local Upper East Side paper in a human interest piece titled "Shoestring Spectacles, Local Family Lights Up Christmas on a Budget." Every year since, she'd been locked in a self-imposed competition to outdo herself, desperately trying to recapture that fleeting moment of suburban glory. But this year, it was going to be different. We'd make the papers again, all right, but not for festive cheer. We'd be plastered across the front page as victims of some kind of holiday hate crime. The "Merry Christmas to Me" banner was ripped down, lying in tatters on the frost-covered lawn, looking like it had been used as a doormat for a herd of angry reindeer. The nativity scene? It was carnage. It looked like someone had taken a baseball bat to the Holy Family. Champ's decapitation was almost quaint in comparison to the rest of the destruction. The wise men were dismembered, their glittery robes torn, their plastic faces smashed. Mary and Joseph were shattered beyond recognition, like some kind of biblical Humpty Dumpty. The strings of lights on the house were ripped down, tangled heaps of wires and bulbs, piled up in a grotesque bonfire on the lawn, with Santa's charred plastic hand sticking out of the smoldering mess. And the reindeer vanished. Looked like someone had upgraded from roasted venison to straight-up reindeer steaks. We lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in a relatively secluded corner of the Upper East Side, nestled amongst towering apartment buildings and pre-war townhouses. Only 5 houses on our little street. But over the years, our place had become an unexpected stop on unofficial Christmas light tours. Cars would creep down the darkened street, and then, bam! Our house would explode into a dazzling, chaotic spectacle of light and plastic, a beacon of suburban Christmas madness in the heart of Manhattan. People surprisingly loved it. How could anyone have found the time for such thorough, meticulous destruction? And more importantly, how did they know we wouldn't be home? Those questions were pounding in my head, a relentless, sickening drumbeat. It was clear the vandals weren't rushed. They'd taken their time, methodically dismantling Deborah's Christmas kingdom. I realized this when I saw the trees. The decorations hanging from the branches weren't just ripped or broken. They were riddled with tiny holes, shot to pieces. BB guns. BB pellets glinted in the weak morning light, scattered across the lawn like metallic confetti. Fresh marks peppered the windows, near misses, evidence of sloppy aim or maybe just drunken glee. Automatic BB guns. Rapid fire. These weren't kids messing around. This was deliberate, calculated vandalism. Deborah was on her knees by the mangled nativity scene, a broken angel wing clutched in her hand, sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled out my phone, thumb fumbling for 911. "Why?" she choked out, her voice ragged with grief and disbelief. "Why would anyone do this? Why to me?" It was a litany, a broken record of despair. I scooped her up in my arms, surprised at how light she felt, and carried her towards the house, gently detaching her fingers from the sharp plastic angel wing. We left the desecrated remains of baby Jesus behind, lying forlornly in the frosty grass. Inside, I sat her down at the kitchen table, pushed a mug of hot tea into her trembling hands. We waited in silence, the only sound Deborah's choked sobs and the distant sirens growing louder. The 2 NYPD officers who arrived were young, fresh-faced, and looked utterly bewildered by the scene of festive carnage. They asked the same questions that were tearing through my brain. How could anyone guarantee they had the time for this? Climbing onto the roof to get Santa. And who knew we wouldn't be home? I explained about our daughter's ski trip upstate and our company Christmas party at the plaza. A big event, hundreds of people. But apart from my colleagues and the girls, I hadn't told a soul about our plans for the evening. The officer, a young woman with kind eyes, glanced at Deborah, the unspoken question hanging in the air. But Deborah, still shell-shocked, just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The patrolman's partner, a burly guy with a thick Brooklyn accent, returned from questioning our closest neighbors. reported a large white van had been parked on our street for a long time that evening. Magnetic sign, catering by Carmine, something about corporate lunches, banquets, weddings. Fake, as further investigation would reveal. Mrs. Rodriguez across the street had seen it, figured we were having a huge Christmas party, didn't think much of it. Neither she nor anyone else remembered the make of the van or the license plate. The officer offered a standard condolence speech, explained that there wasn't enough evidence to do much beyond filing a report. Insurance claim, they suggested, with a weary sigh, like they'd seen this kind of senseless destruction 1,000,000 times before. Just as they were about to leave, a barrage of camera flashes lit up the front windows. The local news had arrived, alerted by someone somehow. Deborah's decorations, our house, would be front-page news again. But this time the headline wouldn't be about holiday cheer. The evening before had started so promisingly. Deborah had been different. Like the Deborah I remembered from years ago. Warm, engaging, almost flirty. For the past year, it had been like living with a hibernating bear, irritable, withdrawn, emotionally distant. Any attempt at intimacy was met with a growl, a metaphorical swipe of sharp claws. I couldn't pinpoint what I'd done wrong, what had fractured our connection. Something had definitely gone off the rails in our marriage. Deborah was only 39. Early menopause. It was the only thing that made any kind of sense. Wanting to keep all my vital organs intact, I'd resisted the urge to bring it up, but it remained my leading theory. I tried to give her space, to be understanding. In June, space morphed into a request, then a demand, that I move into the guest room. I swallowed my pride, resentment churning in my gut, and surrendered the master bedroom. I felt her slipping further and further away, like sand through my fingers, but I clung to the hope that this was just a phase, a hormonal storm that would eventually pass. The weekend had been almost normal. Setting up the decorations, particularly the new, ridiculously expensive, life-sized nativity scene, seemed to breathe some life back into her. Deborah was lighter, more like the happy, vibrant woman I'd married 15 years ago. Getting ready for the company party, she'd actually paused, turned to me, and kissed me. A real kiss, not a peck on the cheek. A kiss that lingered, that hinted at something more, something intimate. Batting her eyelashes, a playful spark in her eyes, she'd even suggested I move my toiletries back into the master bathroom. At the plaza, amidst the forced cheer and awkward small talk of the corporate Christmas party, Deborah transformed. She danced like she was 20 again, graceful, sensual, radiant. The way she looked at me across the crowded ballroom, the love, or what seemed like love, shining in her eyes, it stunned me. After a year of emotional Arctic freeze, this sudden thaw was overwhelming, disorienting. My loving wife, the Deborah I thought I'd lost forever, was back in my arms. Loving me. Only me, or so it seemed. I couldn't understand it. Emotional whiplash. After a year of quiet misery, this sudden, dramatic shift. Had she started hormone therapy? Was she on some kind of mood-altering medication? It felt unreal. Deborah was meticulous about household chores, especially trash duty. She emptied every bin in the house religiously. But in early October, While she was out on one of her marathon decoration hunting expeditions, I noticed a suspiciously full trash can in the guest bathroom. Grabbed a garbage bag, figured I'd score some brownie points, do her a favor. Emptied all the bins in the house, saving the guest bathroom for last. Stepping into the master bathroom, the bathroom I hadn't set foot in for almost 4 months, felt strange, almost forbidden. Emptied the trash can, and then I saw it. Menopause. My ass. She was menstruating. Tampons, pads, applicators, the whole feminine hygiene arsenal. Littered amongst the cotton and plastic were telltale wrappers. Birth control pills, round, discreet packs. In a drawer by the sink I found more. 3 packs in total. 1 pill left in the top pack. Prescription date on the box. Last week of January. Her third 3-month supply, if my calculations were correct. 9 months of birth control. 9 months since she'd started pushing me away. 5 months since the exile to the guest room. 9 months of my patient, understanding act. 9 months of involuntary celibacy. While my wife, who had always been staunchly anti-hormonal contraception, suddenly found it necessary. 9 months. Well, at least it wasn't 9 months of pregnancy. How unbelievably stupid could I be? I slammed my fist against the marble countertop, the sharp crack echoing in the pristine bathroom. Anger surged through me, hot and suffocating. How could Deborah do this to me? I stared at my reflection in the mirror, forced myself to take deep breaths, to calm down, to think. Could my wife be cheating on me? And if so, why the sudden coldness, the emotional withdrawal? Shouldn't she be showering me with affection, trying to cover her tracks? I needed answers, needed to understand. Finished the trash run, retreated to my home office, fired up my computer. Google became my unwilling confidant. Questions needed answers. Question 1. Can a woman have periods during menopause? Answer: no. Menopause, I discovered, is officially diagnosed after a woman has gone 12 consecutive months without a menstrual period. So, not menopause. Maybe she was skipping months. Could mimic menopause symptoms, but not the real deal. Perimenopause, then? Maybe. Question 2. Can birth control be used to regulate or ease menopause symptoms? Yes. Birth control pills can help manage some symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. But they should not be used as a replacement for hormone replacement therapy, HRT. So what the hell was going on? More internet digging, perimenopause symptoms, mood changes, definitely. She'd never been this difficult before. Changes in sexual desire? Oh, absolutely. Problems with concentration or memory? Not that I'd noticed. She remembered every single perceived slight, every minor infraction from the past 15 years. Headaches. I'd had plenty lately. Night sweats. Maybe that's why she'd banished me from the bed. Hot flashes. Only flashes of incandescent rage. Dryness in sensitive areas. After a year of enforced celibacy, how the hell would I know? Sleep problems? Possibly. Then again, maybe that was just the guest room mattress. I wanted to scream, tear my hair out. Just needed answers. But the damn questions kept multiplying, swirling around in my head like a blizzard of confusion. I decided to play it cool, wait a little longer. But now, I'd be watching, paying closer attention. Deborah had always been a homemaker, ever since the kids were born. Now that Sarah and Emily were teenagers, practically adults, her time was mostly her own. Housekeeper came twice a week, handled the deep cleaning. Takeout 2 or 3 nights a week. Girls were pizza and burrito fiends. Deborah and I preferred Indian, Thai, Chinese. Other nights, she cooked, except Saturdays. Breakfast and lunch were DIY affairs, plenty of free time. Her biggest, most time-consuming project? The holiday decorations. Honestly, way too many holiday decorations. But it was her passion. Over the years, it had become not just a time sink, but a significant financial investment. Animatronics, mechanical figures, people, animals, bizarre holiday creatures, Halloween displays dominated by ghoulish figures that jumped out and screamed, Santa and his sleigh on the roof, reindeer heads bobbing, tinny Christmas carols blaring all night until the timers finally shut them down. And that's not even mentioning the flashing hearts for Valentine's Day, the hopping bunnies for Easter, or the relentless seizure-inducing fireworks lights that twinkled from Memorial Day through the 4th of July. We lived in a relatively secluded spot, end of a dead-end street. No random foot traffic. No casual observers for most of her elaborate displays, except for the dedicated few who knew about our house and made the pilgrimage during Halloween and Christmas. Admittedly, she had a local fan base for those 2 holidays. But for the rest, we definitely didn't need crowd control for the St. Patrick's Day Leprechaun Garden, yet every year, more decorations. More boxes crammed into the garage. I'm rambling. Point is, I realized just how much free time Deborah actually had now that the kids were older. That's when I started coming home at odd hours during the day. Not frequently. My job as a financial analyst at a midtown firm didn't exactly allow for spontaneous departures, but often enough to get a sense of her routine. And the routine, as it turned out, was absent. Deborah wasn't home. Not nearly as often as she should have been. Asked her about it. Porcupine defense mode activated. Needles practically flew across the room. Angry, evasive retorts. My casual inquiries were treated like hostile interrogations. Besides, she always had an explanation, ready and waiting. Decoration shopping. Errands. Lunch with Sarah's guidance counselor. The excuses were endless and increasingly flimsy. It was too much. I needed concrete answers. Help. Private investigator. Vacation fund. Deborah hadn't shown the slightest interest in a vacation in years. If someone followed her for a week, discreetly, professionally, I'd finally know the truth. But when I called a detective agency, the reality check hit hard. Surveillance, $200 an hour, plus expenses, mileage, parking, tolls, incidentals. Considering Deborah was alone, unsupervised, for at least 8 hours a day, that came out to $1,600 a day, $8,000 for a 5-day week, Monday through Friday. Our dwindling vacation fund couldn't possibly cover that kind of financial hemorrhage. Asking a friend or neighbor to keep an eye on Deborah? Amateur hour. Thought about it for maybe 60 seconds before discarding the idea as utterly ridiculous. First, finding a friend I trusted implicitly, who also had the time, the discretion, and the observational skills to effectively tail my wife. Impossible. My friends who didn't work were slackers. Great guys for a beer and a Mets game, but definitely not James Bond material. And I wouldn't trust them to follow my own dog, let alone my possibly cheating wife. The friends I would trust, the responsible, reliable ones, all had demanding jobs, families, lives. They couldn't just drop everything to play amateur spy for a week, just in case my wife was having an affair. A week before Deborah's disastrous Christmas party, her laptop died. Somehow, I just knew it was going to be my fault, because, of course, I was the one who had bought it for her 5 years ago. But surprisingly, she was sweet, almost pleading. "Michael, honey, could you take a look at it? It just stopped working." Almost loving. When Deborah left for her morning yoga class, I agreed to investigate. Didn't take long. Rootkit virus. Nasty piece of malware had burrowed deep, wiped out critical boot track files, removed the infection, restored the missing files. The computer sprang back to life, booting up as if nothing had happened. Curiosity, or maybe just a morbid sense of self-destruction, led me to her email. I knew Deborah well enough to know she didn't have the patience for constant logging in and out. Sure enough, her inbox opened right away. The most recent emails were all I needed, all it took to shatter what little remained of my heart. "Please, please, please don't do this," read the subject line of the latest email. Sender, Jimmy Love, 69. The next 3 were also from him. "I love you. Don't leave me. You don't love him." And the oldest, buried at the bottom of the inbox. "What do you mean it's over?" I didn't even need to open the emails. The subject line screamed the story loud and clear. I understood everything. She'd left me. Months ago, emotionally, spiritually. And now she was leaving her lover, Jimmy Love 69. Apparently she had someone new lined up, waiting in the wings. Later, in the cold, desolate aftermath, I'd think I should have gone further back, scrolled through her sent emails, read her side of the conversation with Jimmy Love 69, maybe decipher the timeline, the depth of her betrayal, figure out who she had moved on to. But at that moment, I was too numb, too crushed. Just shut the laptop down, the screen going dark, mirroring the sudden darkness that had descended on my world. I had loved Deborah unconditionally. I had waited an entire year, like a pathetic, lovesick puppy, while she had, who knows how many lovers. Was Jimmy the first? The 5th? The 50th? Did it even matter anymore? Couldn't breathe. Couldn't stop the tears from welling up, blurring my vision. All I could do was start planning my exit. From our house, from our marriage, from this entire charade of a life. Deborah, sensing a shift in the tectonic plates of our relationship, didn't make it easy. I think I must have let my decision to leave slip. Some subtle change in my demeanor, some unspoken resignation in my eyes. Suddenly, miraculously, she became a concerned wife again. Hints about me moving back into the master bedroom, inquiries about my health, my stress levels. I ignored her carefully constructed overtures, claiming I was coming down with something conveniently vague and contagious sounding. My excuses eerily mirrored hers from months ago, when she'd first retreated into her emotional fortress. Aside from a fleeting look of disappointment, a flicker of calculation in her eyes, she didn't push the issue. And God knows, at that moment, the thought of any kind of physical intimacy with her, even the faintest echo of our broken marriage bed, filled me with revulsion. After the police finally left, their sympathy feeling hollow and perfunctory, Deborah turned to me again, her voice still thick with tears, but now tinged with a new note of anxiety. "Why, Michael? Why would someone do this to me?" I took a slow sip of my lukewarm tea, staring down into the murky liquid, swirling the dregs around the bottom of the mug. Casually, almost conversationally, I asked, "Do you think it was Jimmy?" The quiet, ragged sobbing stopped abruptly. When I finally looked up, Deborah was staring at me, eyes wide with shock, disbelief, and a dawning, terrifying realization. Fear. Pure, unadulterated fear. You know about Jimmy." "Yeah, Deborah, I know about Jimmy," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "He emailed me everything about your grand love affair." I watched the steam rise from my cup, a pathetic wisp of vapor in the cold, silent kitchen. "He wouldn't do that to me," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "He loved me." Deborah scrubbed at her nose with a tissue, smearing mascara across her cheek. Then the carefully constructed facade of victimhood began to crumble. "Honey," she started, her voice taking on a wheedling, manipulative tone. "Jimmy, he was a mistake. A stupid mistake." "A mistake you thought you were in love with?" My voice was still flat, toneless. "Doesn't matter. Mistake." She waved a dismissive hand, as if Jimmy Love 69 was nothing more than a regrettable fashion choice. "It is what it is," I said grimly, standing up from the table, the chair scraping harshly against the linoleum floor. "But he clearly didn't feel much love when he wrote to me about your romance. And what did you do, Deborah? Dump him for some other guy?" "No, I told him it was over. I told him it was a mistake." Her voice rose in pitch, bordering on hysteria. "So you broke his heart, and now he wants to hurt you back. Seems like a reasonable reaction to me." "That's what heartbroken people do, Deborah. They get angry. They lash out. They hit you where it hurts." I started walking towards the garage, the scene of the morning's devastation, feeling a strange, detached calm settle over me. "That's why I think Jimmy did this. In some twisted, pathetic way, he probably thinks he can win you back." "Where are you going?" Deborah cried, jumping up from her chair, scrambling to grab my arm, to physically stop me. "Jimmy and I are over. It's done, I swear." I shook her off, her touch feeling alien, repulsive, kept walking towards the garage, towards the chaotic pile of holiday wreckage. "Yeah, Deborah, it's over. It's been over between us for a long time now, for a whole goddamn year. You treated me like garbage, like I was invisible. And why? So you could sneak around and sleep with that pathetic loser Jimmy? Well, congratulations, Deborah. He can have you. You're all his now." "No, Michael, no, I love you," she wailed, dropping to her knees on the cold kitchen floor, a pathetic crumpled heap of denial and desperation. "It was all a mistake. Everything. Last New Year's Eve, I saw you kissing Melinda at Sarah's party. I saw her, rubbing up against you, and I was so angry, so hurt, so sure you were sleeping with her." The tears were flowing freely now, a torrent of self-pity and manufactured remorse. "I started seeing Jimmy. just to get back at you, to make you feel the way you made me feel. But last week, I ran into Melinda at the grocery store, and she apologized to me. She said she'd thrown herself at you, but you pushed her away. She said she was drunk. Didn't even realize it was you. She was... Deborah was sobbing so hard now she could barely get the words out, each breath a strangled gasp. I reached the garage door, hit the automatic opener. The door rumbled open, revealing the chaotic interior, the boxes of decorations, the lingering scent of burnt plastic and shattered dreams. I saw them then, tucked away in a corner, almost hidden behind a stack of oversized inflatable snowmen. My packed suitcases, sitting there, waiting. For weeks. I didn't know, Michael. As soon as I found out about Melinda, I broke things off with Jimmy. It was all a mistake. Please, you have to believe me. It was a mistake. You could have talked to me, Deborah. You could have asked me if anything happened with Melinda. But no, your answer wasn't communication. Your answer was infidelity. Was Jimmy the only one, Deborah? Or were there others? Was he just the flavor of the month? Or the flavor of the last 9 months? I grabbed the suitcases, started loading them into the trunk of my car, parked in the driveway, next to the decapitated remains of Champ. Don't answer that, Deborah. I don't care. Our marriage, it's like your Christmas decorations. I slammed the trunk shut, the metallic clang echoing in the morning air. Destroyed, crushed, broken, beyond repair. As a last desperate, utterly pathetic argument to make me stay, she screamed, "But I love you, Michael, I do." I backed out of the driveway, tires crunching on the frost-covered lawn, swerving slightly to make sure I cleared Champ's severed head. I'd moved it off the road earlier, when we first arrived home, a small act of morbid courtesy. Goodbye, Deborah. As I drove out of our Upper East Side neighborhood, leaving behind the wreckage of our life, of her Christmas fantasy, I thought about how little it had actually cost me. The magnetic signs for the white van, $50 online. 2 Crosman ST-1 automatic BB guns from a sporting goods store. $500, including tax. 2 bored, restless punks from the local basketball court. More than happy to trash a suburban Christmas scene in exchange for some high-powered weaponry. They'd used the ladder I conveniently forgot to put away after hanging the lights. Reached Santa on the roof with surprising ease. Put the ladder back in the shed when they were done. Professional vandals to the end. I'd been a little worried about stray BBs hitting the windows, leaving visible damage. But my share of the insurance payout for Deborah's vandalized decorations would more than cover a few broken panes. And honestly, it was worth the risk. I'd never have gotten even half the true value of that cursed life-sized nativity scene in a divorce settlement, not to mention the animatronic reindeer, the singing snowmen, the whole goddamn festive menagerie. Maybe I should have had those kids pull out the Halloween junk from the garage, too. Gone for the complete, cathartic destruction of Deborah's entire holiday obsession. But that would have been overkill. And Jimmy Love 69? Of course. He'd never actually emailed me. But I knew Deborah. Knew her insecurities, her paranoia, her desperate need to be the center of attention. She wouldn't listen to his denials. She'd believe the lie. And Jimmy, whoever he was, wouldn't be crawling back between her legs anytime soon. I figured divorcing her might eventually lead to him or some other equally pathetic replacement, ending up in her bed, and I'd probably end up paying for it in some twisted way. Alimony, therapy bills, emotional baggage. Well, maybe I'd pay alimony, and she'd definitely have other lovers. But it wouldn't be Jimmy Love 69. Not this year. This year, I hadn't bought Deborah a Christmas gift. Hadn't even considered it. I think my Christmas surprise, this carefully orchestrated, beautifully destructive act of holiday revenge, was more than enough.